With young people in the driver's seat. And now that I look at the panel, I'm very confused whom to start with. We have such a strong panel here who are very experienced in their respective fields, and they all represent different parts of the society. So let's start with the fellow youth. Kaisin, sorry, but I'll start with you. So Kaisin, you have been working in Malaysia as the focal point of Malaysian youth delegation for quite a long time now. You guys also recently co-organized the Regional Conference of Youth. From your experience, this is a very burning question, I guess. I want to know from you, Kaisin, that what are the key challenges that youth face while actively engaging and contributing to the whole society approach for climate transformation?
Alright, thanks for the questions. Good morning everyone. I'm Kaisin from Malaysian Youth Delegations. A bit introductions about Malaysia's youth delegations, we call it MYD in short. So we raise public awareness towards climate policy, and we provide a lot of capacity building to Malaysian youth specifically to able to attend all the climate policies and also understand UNFCCC processes. And that's how we support them to attend all the international conference, so including to COP. And just like how Parag mentions, we already organized local conference of youth since 2017, and this year we co-organized with ARE for COP and some other partners as well to organize regional conference of youth. So that's how we really want to empower youth in Malaysia. And another thing is that a lot of people get confused that we are youth in the national delegation team, but actually we are a registered youth-led CSO based in Malaysia. So that's a bit about MYD. So back to your questions about the key challenges that you face, especially in driving the whole society climate transformations. I think the first one I want to start with with the youth that is not that hasn't been starting their journey in climate actions. I think the main challenges is that the first step is always the hardest, right? So they doesn't know where to start, how to start, or even they got questions is their effort really contributing to the changes? So that's the thing we're trying to advocating as well. We tell them actually youth can contribute in different perspectives. Even you have different professions, you can contribute in different ways as well. I think, and the second thing I will start with, for the youth that already have been starting their journey in contributing to all the climate actions. I think first on the mental side is always equal anxiety, because when we delve into more about the climate issues, we'll find every issue is interlinked and it's complex. So it's very hard, and also sometimes you'll feel powerless and hopeless, especially for youth. They'll feel they doesn't have the power to really change what the planet currently is facing, especially for the climate disaster. So I think that's mainly making it, especially demotivating youth to really contribute to that. And second is actually about finance. Youth has limited funding, limited access to funding resources, because without any funding we can't really carry out large and also long-term initiative especially. So I think lacking of the funding mechanisms is really a huge barrier for youth to contribute to the climate transformations. And also one last thing, I think that's the most common issues as well, is that youth voices often get neglected. It's because all of the adults think that you're not experienced enough and the solutions you have been provided is not implementable. But I think that's what make it very, that's the issues, is because we might not be experienced enough, considering the climate issues is just that complex. But the thing is, we have that passions and we really have the innovative ideas and solutions that is carried within us. So I think we are really open to have a lot of communications with all stakeholders to see what's the potential and how to meet at the sweet spots to really see like how we can work together to achieve and also to work for implementable solutions. Yeah, I think and also like youth is one of the stakeholders, right? But we definitely need all of the stakeholders to really work with us to really see like how's the collaborations between every stakeholders, because climate issues we really need like a multi-phase approach to really deal with it. Yes, and also it's very important that all stakeholders come together to foster a supportive environment for youth to take part in the climate transformative change. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Kaisen. I really like what you said, that all stakeholders must come together to support and foster youth innovations, right? So with that takeaway, I'd like to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Robin, who is currently working for the Singapore PM's office as an assistant director. So taking from Kaisen's point that all the stakeholders should come together to foster youth innovations, I want to know from you that how is your government actively involving local communities, including and especially youth and marginalized group, in the development and implementation of climate policies within a whole of society framework?
Thank you so much for that question. And just a quick introduction as well. So, Ruben, I'm from the National Climate Change Secretariat. We're an office within the Prime Minister's Office of Singapore. And our role is essentially to coordinate climate change policies across the whole of government. But we also take the policy lead in some areas, such as carbon pricing, carbon markets, low carbon technologies, and as Kaisen said, how do you channel finance to climate action? But in addition to that, we also have a role, and it links to your question, of how do we incubate and accelerate new policies, new climate-related policies for the government. And as part of our work this year, youth was a key priority. So as part of that, we launched the inaugural Climate Youth Development Program. And what this program essentially aims to do is to give Singapore youth a platform or access to multiple climate-related platforms where they can amplify their voices or where they can effectively play a role in policy making. So as part of the program, what we did is there are currently 40 youth under the program. I think due to resourcing constraints, we sort of kept it at 40 for the first run. They went through a one-week-long program, or the youth as part of this program, where they got to interact with Singapore policymakers, corporates, heads of many of the Singapore companies, NGOs, as well as academia, to learn more about global climate policies, as well as Singapore's, the considerations behind Singapore's climate action. And flowing from that, what has happened is the youth then have access to many of the events that happen in Singapore, but also in the region. So for example, about 2 weeks ago, or last week, Singapore hosted the Earth Shot. And the youth got to participate in the Earth Shot as part of that. And before that, when Singapore hosted the Singapore International Energy Week, the youth who are interested in energies get to participate in it as well. And I guess since we are this close to COP28, as part of the Singapore delegation, for the first time, Singapore will bring a youth delegation to COP28. So of the 40, half of them will be traveling to COP28 as part of this program, funded through this program, where they will get to do two things. So they will get to shadow negotiators. So they join the negotiators for a few tracks, so mitigation, the global stocktake, given the importance this year, and Article 6, because a lot of capacity building and awareness is needed on carbon markets. So through that, we hope that youth get a platform to understand what happens in the room as part of negotiations, and as what was said before this, how do the youth play an active role, not just as observers, but as participants in the process. And the other aspect that the youth will be doing at COP is to be climate ambassadors, youth climate ambassadors. So for example, at COP, Singapore, together with some multinational partners, the World Economic Forum, so on and so forth, is organizing a Climate Leaders Assembly that aims to gather about 150 global leaders, so CEOs of big companies, NGOs, and academia, and policymakers in for a session, and 20 the youth will get to shadow these global CEOs throughout the event, so they get chances to interact with the global leaders to share their perspectives. Because I think the belief is that when you increase touch points for interactions, then youth voices can be heard and it can be amplified to individuals, but also to platforms where you can effect change. So, sorry, a very long-winded response to your question, but just to share a bit of what's happening in terms of how government, or rather the Singapore government, is supporting Singapore youth to amplify their voices at international platforms.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think it's very inspiring to know that the Sri Lankan government is taking a youth delegation to COP. And I think this can be an example for Singapore's neighboring countries, especially countries in the South Asia, especially in our countries, to be very specific. Thank you for the great initiative, and thank you for your answer. Moving on, we have Noman Haq with us, whom I call Noman Bhai. Noman, you have been working with Save the Children for quite a long time now, and there is this very particular question I have always been meaning to ask you, which is, how do you think can partnerships between development partners and youth organizations be strengthened to enhance their collective impact on climate action? Because we see a lot of partnerships between development partners and youth organizations, but how do you think that these partnerships can be enhanced to enhance their collective action in the climate scenario?
Thank you for that. For those who don't know, maybe I'll give a short background about Save the Children. So Save the Children is one of the oldest NGOs in the world. It's been around since about 1919, and it has a very noble cause, which is literally to save the children, and ensure that we bring our children up in a just world. With that, we strongly believe, or we work on the premise that a world that is fit for children is a world that is fit for everybody. So be that climate action or action with respects to other aspects of social development. Save the Children is an organization that is very child-centered and puts children at the forefront. That said, let's talk about youth. So strengthening partnerships with youth. This is something that's very important and something that we focus quite a bit on. I'll tell you a little bit about my work. I'm the climate change advisor for the Bangladesh office. And a large part of my work is to try and involve youth more in climate change processes. And we heard from Ruben a little earlier about how much is being done to involve youth in climate policy processes and international negotiations and so on. My work varies slightly. I try and involve youth more on the implementation side of things, so that we actually understand the changes that are going on in our world and what we can do to better respond to them. I'll pick on a small example where we worked with disadvantaged youth from one of the largest slums in Bangladesh, and this area, this slum in Bangladesh, was home to some of the largest tanneries that existed in the country up until recently. And so they're quite familiar with environmental degradation and the effects on health and wellness stemming from mismanagement of the environment. So what we did is we led a consultation with including 150 youth participants from these slums to try and get their opinions on what they believe climate change is and what they believe is important to them and how we can address those issues. Korag, you may remember this because you helped me quite a bit with this, and thank you for that. And we received some very strong suggestions, as well as some very pragmatic solutions as to how we can engage in climate action from a very basic level. I often get the question from people that, I don't understand climate change. So what can I actually do about it? And the reality is we don't need to understand climate change. As was mentioned earlier, we're already in the era of loss and damage. What we need more now is action more than ever. And it's a question of survivability and a question of quality of life. So coming to your question about partnerships and how we can improve them, I think we can do so on a lot of fronts. One is open, free, and fair dialogue, which I believe a forum like this is a perfect example of bringing youth advocates, policymakers, members of government, and members of civil society together to basically talk about our shared vision and how we can each contribute to it with our different strengths. And I believe more forums like this are important and will enhance collective impact on climate action. How development partners such as us can help foster such action. We like to play a facilitatory role. We like to bring people together who have previously not maybe had the opportunity to be together. For example, policymakers and youth. And given we have a very noble cause, which is saving the children, we are very good at bringing people together because we all share an objective. And I'll stop there because I feel like I'm going on without purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Noman Bhai. And I really like what you said about setting up free and fair dialogues. I think that's really important when it comes to actually listening to young people and taking their suggestions and taking their opinions seriously. But when it comes to free and fair dialogues, not only free and fair dialogues, when it comes to overall youth engagement, there are some certain challenges that all the other stakeholder groups face. I'd like to again come back to Mr. Robin with this question, that you guys are doing a great job with the youth delegation program. But I want to know that you definitely have faced some barriers, some struggles, and there are some challenges obviously. So in your view, what do you think that what specific measures can government take to overcome barriers and enhance youth participation in the development and execution of climate initiatives, both at local and national levels? Thank you.
Thanks for that. And it's often spoken about what are the challenges, and I think Kaishin did a very good job at highlighting some of the challenges, funding, etc., that youth face in terms of effectively participating in, especially international fora. But if I can slightly reframe your question, so how we came about in developing this program, as well as developing our broader thinking of how can we effectively involve youth and give them a greater climate voice. We approach it more from the perspective of what are the opportunities to be reaped from greater youth involvement, rather than what are the challenges we overcome. So I'll give you some concrete examples. So I shared a bit about COP28 and youth involvement there, and then I'll use that as an example. So when we decided to run this Global Leaders program, we actually studied what were the best practices. So what happens at Davos, what happens at St. Gallen, so on and so forth. And we realized, and we polled global leaders, CEOs, to get their feedback. And we realized one of the key success factors was that of St. Gallen, which was the more highly rated event, and this was consistent throughout, was that because the organizers got youth to be the liaisons for the leaders. And the engagements the leaders had with the youth inspired them to...
Our speakers here. If we have, yes, please, you can take the center mic.
Hello everyone, I am JV from the Philippines. So first of all, I would like to thank you for the wonderful discussions, and I really appreciate the work that you guys have been doing to providing space and involving young people in this kind of spaces. So, as we know, climate change affects all of us. However, it disproportionately impacts some sectors of the society, especially those from indigenous peoples and local communities. So my question is, what does the youth constituency has been doing to involve young indigenous peoples in this kind of discussions, and are there any initiatives that we're doing to involve more young people from these communities? And if there is, what are the platforms that are in place to ensure, of course, meaningful participation from indigenous peoples and local communities, especially young indigenous people and women? Thanks.
Thank you. Would you also like to direct your question? Who are you asking the question to?
Well, it's a general question, like for all of them, because it's not really pointed on anything. But since all of you guys are involved as well on youth mobilization, so.
Thank you. Would anyone like to answer the question?
Yeah, I can take that question first. So from my perspective, because I'm leading youth organizations in Malaysia. So I think what we have been doing is we want to reach out to minority groups and indigenous groups to at least kick off the conversations of how we can properly have a collaborations, or how we can properly be inclusive, for all the events. Because back in last year Alcoy and this year Alcoy, we want to be more inclusive, as we want to invite indigenous people to join as a panel and also as a participant. But we know the barriers there is that we want to be inclusive, as we want to provide with all of the funding, especially covering all the transportations and accommodations, and we want to provide we want to overcome the language barrier as well, in terms of providing all the translations and be inclusive as in the language. So that's the barrier that we want to overcome, and we are still seeking a proper way in terms of before really starting the collaborations and really integrating and also interacting with you all. So actually I have been a lot of conversations, and my team have been a lot of conversations with indigenous group that has been attended to APCW, because APCW provide us with a great opportunity and a great networking spaces for us. So I think you all are very open with discussion as well. So that's the thing that have been mentioned, enhancing the two-way communications is very important. So I think we are really happy to have more conversations. Please tell us that what we have to do, and also what you need in terms of the collaborations, because we really realize the importance of being inclusive, and we want to do it in a proper way and in the correct way. Yeah, that's from me.
Thank you, Kaisin. And adding on with Kaisin, if you are looking for platforms to engage, the three names at the bottom of this banner are also very strong platforms. There is Yango, which is the official Chilean youth constituency to UNFCCC, that involves young people in the global climate advocacy. Then there is Asian Youth Empowerment for COP, which is specifically focused on Asian young people being in the climate space. And then there is also YECAP, which is also a very strong platform to enhance your capacity, grow your knowledge on the climate process and climate discourses. Thank you for the question, and also thanks again, Kaisin, for the answer. We'll take one last question and then we'll pass the floor to our colleague Akhilesh. Does anyone have any questions?
Hello, nama saya Diana. Saya orang asli dari Pahang. So, saya akan cakap dalam bahasa je lah. So, saya orang asli, saya rasa masih lagi suara belia orang asli kurang didengari. Sebab, kenapa saya cakap macam tu? Saya masih lagi tinggal di kampung, dan banyak komuniti yang tinggal berhampiran dengan hutan, dan mereka masih lagi pakai wilayah tanah adat mereka. So saya percaya yang proses ni adalah salah satu penyumbang terbesar dalam isu perubahan iklim, sebab dalam masa yang sama ni adalah proses untuk menjaga alam, menjaga bumi kita kan. So soalan yang kedua adalah macam mana wakil ataupun, sebab saya percaya MYD adalah satu bentuk platform yang bagus untuk bawa suara komuniti di kawasan pedalaman, kampung ke peringkat antarabangsa. So saya nak tahu macam mana data ataupun maklumat dikutip untuk dibawa ke peringkat antarabangsa lah, sebab COP dah nak hampir. So macam mana proses ni dikutip? terutama di kawasan pedalaman, orang asli, luar bandar yang suka untuk dihubungilah dalam kalangan komuniti itu.
Thank you, Kaisin. I think you can answer that.
I'll translate for a bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the audience does not. Yeah, with the glaring lack of translation facilities here, so I'll step in to translate. So, what she said. My name is Diana. She's an orang asli in Pahang. She felt that the voice of indigenous youth who are living in the community away from urban areas are often neglected. These communities have been living close to nature and have special relationship to nature. They contribute less to carbon emission, but are always at the forefront of climate change effect. Second question, that's a comment, and second question is directed to the speaker from Malaysia. With the coming COP28, what is the process and methods in collecting and compiling data about indigenous peoples at the grassroots level, and to bring this issue at regional and global level?
Thank you. I think.
Yeah, all right, thanks for the questions. Yeah, I mean, I have been emphasizing that we actually notice the issues and we want to be inclusive, and we are still, like discovering how to be really inclusive in terms of to start, integrating and also interacting with you all. And I think back to your questions, like how is the policy statement have been made before we go into COP, and especially to be inclusive with all your opinions and feedbacks, right? I think what we have been doing is because we are having ALCOI, which is Local Conference of Youth, and the main outputs of ALCOI is the youth statement, which is supposed to be representing Malaysian youth, but we have been noticed that one conference can't be representing the voices of whole Malaysian youth, so we decide to declare it as it is actually an outcomes of Local Conference of Youth. So it's actually a collective effort of who has been attended to Local Conference of Youth. And I think that's the thing that why we want to be inclusive for indigenous people and minority groups to attend to Local Conference of Youth is because we want to, make your voice heard, and especially regarding to all of the agenda issues, we saw that actually a lot of agenda issues talks about land rights and etc. It's actually really related with you, but at the same time, we want to kick off the conversations of how to do it properly. So I think that takes times for us. So actually, we are really open with communications. Once again, we can have a proper discussions on how we can properly make it, because due to the lack of network and lack of communications, we doesn't have a proper opportunity to really talk with you all. So I've been mentioned that we actually starting the conversations like a while ago, and also especially in the APCW, we have doing a lot of conversations on actually what your concerns are and how we can do it properly. So I think that's the thing we are still discovering, and we are actually really happy to know actually what kind of approach that you guys will be prefer for us to being inclusive, because for MID we have a nature that everyone that going to COP actually they are based on they are representing MID, but actually the topics they are following is actually about related with their own interests as well. So everyone they will do their own research, and actually we have a strategy is that we want to do our own interview. So we did our own research and we interviewed the people within Malaysia or even Southeast Asia to see what's the needs of that, because we realized that not everyone has the opportunity to go to COP or even any of the international climate conference. So that's the thing that we want to be properly representing your voices. I know that we can't really represent your voices, but at least we can somehow help you to increase the exposures of the challenges that you are facing right now.
Thank you, Kaisin. I hope that answers your question. And then thanks everyone for joining the panel and having such a great conversation. We have another part of our session coming up, which will be led by Achilles. So I'd like to thank you all.
See processes, better engage and collaborate with Asian youth to harness their ideas and energy for a more effective climate policy making. And maybe you could share a few personal examples as well.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity and thank you for the question as well. I know that the moderator already introduced me, my background and everything, but I just want to clarify at first that I'm not officially assigned by the government to represent them, to talk on their behalf, but I just want to share an experience from what I've seen from outside and within the government as well. So, as mentioned by the moderator, I just joined government recently, so I'm still new and I'm learning and I'm trying to do my best and also trying to build a bridge for young people and the government, as other panelists have said. So, so throughout my journey, as a climate activist, I've been a climate activist for quite sometimes now. So I've seen that in Asia, especially in my country, Timor-Leste, even Asian people, they don't know Timor-Leste is part of the Asia. So yeah, it's in Southeast Asia. It's still the same region as Malaysia. We're between Indonesia and Australia. So I've seen that in my country, some young people see climate change, do not see climate change as an issue, and they do not worry about that. While others, they see that climate change as a threat. They worry about that, they want to do something about it, but they just don't have a space or platform for them to engage, to take part, or to basically be part of the policy making or in the discussion. So what can we do to engage more young people? So to answer your question, first I think it's very important to establish a youth advocacy mechanism. We have to institutionalize the youth-specific deliberation and decision-making spaces in adult-led structure, either within the government or in the sub-national structure. So to ease the coordination, I know that most people have said that in the previous panel session, sometimes it's hard to include everybody on board to build the bridge, to understand what young people want and what government wants from young people. So I think it's very important for every country to establish or to have the youth advisory group on climate change, so they can be part of the decision making, that they can represent the young people in the country, and of course to mobilize young people across the country to get their voice heard. And the second one, I would say consultation. I know that sometimes we overlook the consultation, but this is very important, especially we want to include everybody on board. The thing is, we have to do consultation that go to different area in the region. I know that sometimes most of the consultation only happen in urban area due to different constraints, but it's very important that we decentralize the youth consultation, allowing every young people from different region to raise their voices. And we have to know what they're advocating for and what's the solution they can bring onto the policy making. And the last one I want to highlight is LCOI. I know that the previous session has mentioned the LCOI so many times, and I think that this is very crucial that every country should host LCOI every year to ensure that young people from different regions, from different backgrounds, race are included in the decision making. So in Timor-Leste in 2021, I organized the local conference of youth in Timor-Leste for the first time ever, where we gathered youth more than 40 people because it was during COVID. So we couldn't gather more than that. And we managed to provide that capacity building to inform and educate our youth about the climate change, and also allow them to raise their voices by creating their own statement and then submitted to the COI 16 at the time. So, but the local conference of youth we do not do this year, and we only did once because of the financial constraints. So I think this is very important that we should take this into the consideration as well. So just to wrap up, the thing is like it's hard and it's challenging and it's sometimes impossible to include everyone to be like to present in person in policy making or in consultation, even in national level or international level. But we have to find a way. We have to find alternative way to interact young people, even though they're not there in person, but at least their voice are heard and being considered. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tricia. You mentioned about enhancing consultation mechanisms, bringing youth advisory groups, building that mechanism as properly, and also about ALCOI. We have been hearing about ALCOI a lot since the morning, and if you are still unaware of what ALCOI means, it's a mechanism that comes under Yango, which is the local conference of youth, which successfully this year we had conducted around 100 and 105 ALCOIs across 105 countries, and there's so many ALCOI coordinators or organizers here which you could meet from different countries. And if you are a young person from a country looking forward to host ALCOI or want to learn more about it, please do chat with us and get to know more. So building upon what Tricia said, I would like to now move to Joshua, and as a partner, youth development partner, how have you been able to leverage your unique position to bridge the gap between government officials, indigenous youth leaders, and other development partners in advancing climate policies? I think it really builds upon what Tricia said as well. And can you maybe share if there's any successful case studies or examples, stories from the past that has happened?
Right, thank you. Maybe just a brief introduction to take things a little bit back. My name is Joshua. I'm from Brunei. So, like what Tuan Nashhan said, there's a lot of influence, regional influence with our neighbor. Brunei is the eastern side neighbor of Malaysia, and my mom is half Malaysian. So there's a lot of cultural ties that is instilled within me. I'm also an Iban, half Iban, half Kayan, and Kayan is the Orang Ulu tribes in Borneo or Sarawak. And one thing that I would consider is being in a platform, WeCup. This platform is basically a convening of various UN agencies, which includes UNDP, RCC Bangkok, and many more, with the support of SIDA. So this is basically a platform where we want to provide a capacity building capacity and also basically network with all of our partners so that we can elevate their advocacy and activism in the field of climate change. So I initially shared a little bit part of my background to start. I think it's quite important because there was indigenous leader in the statement, and I want to basically say that it is great to be in the position where you are also part of a tribe where you want to get more indigenous people around the world to be part of the processes. And in this panel alone, the first panel alone has two questions from probably indigenous youth or people who work with indigenous youth. And I think this panel have two indigenous person who work closely with them or work in alignment with them, which I will give Charles to explain more later. So you can see in this conference alone during the first panel, you could see that they were asking questions to the government, and of course you can also see obviously in this morning session alone there were challenges like the translator. Sometimes something which is it's very small, it could have been done. That's the national language, and bear in mind there's also indigenous language, and I think it's a process of where people need to kind of like retrospect, as the title says, and learn. Perhaps in the future, when there is a new session, they will learn from it. So, as a development partners, YICAP basically established a youth advisory group on climate justice and environment. So basically, a huge part of this is basically supporting human rights defenders. And most human rights defenders are actually of indigenous backgrounds. They are like forest defenders, and people who also work along with them as well, organizations that work along with them as well. So this youth advisory group they are mandated, or they were given the chance to advise certain UN agency, direction, statement in the regional level. And along with that as well, YICAP also has a YICAP Indigenous Fellow. So for indigenous people who want their voices to be heard more, not only within the national capacity, but regional capacity, YICAP has it. And the two of the convening partners is in this stage. And yeah, what we do is we give regional awareness of issues around Asia-Pacific region, capacity building and consultation with relevant stakeholders. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe before I move to Charu for this, can you also briefly share what has the impact been for this advisory group?
Oh, okay. So one impact was actually during the 79 statement, regional statement on youth. So basically, the youth advisory group, along with other UCAP-related or UN-related groups, convened together to do the 79 statement commission, the regional ASCAP commission. So yeah, but they were given a chance to talk and give their grievances to in the international crowd at the UN ASCAP. And I think, yeah, that's one example where youth and relevant stakeholder plus government share a room and were given a platform to share their grievances.
That's amazing, and I think we can really build on that and move to Charu, who's the program coordinator for Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, and I think you could briefly share about yourself a bit, and coming to the question, which I think you can address a lot of the questions that came across here. So, what challenges and opportunities have arisen in fostering these collaborations between indigenous communities and governments, especially in the Asia-Pacific region, and especially to address climate change, and how can these collaborations be strengthened in the future?
Okay, thank you very much, class, and then so all the audience. So already the moderator explained that I am from Hoi area. So Asia Indigenous People Pact, this is the indigenous movement organization based in Thailand. So, but originally I am from Bangladesh. Yeah, I am very much happy to see the speaker and audience from Bangladesh here in this forum. And just let me say something to background about the organization, then I will come to your point for the challenges and how we can collaborate with the government and other organizations. So when the UN adopted the rights of the indigenous people in the UN, so all the indigenous leaders across the world, they met together, and they felt the need that the issue should be consolidated, and then the consolidated issue say that the big number of the indigenous people basically live in Asia. So, but the indigenous people, they work actually solely in their respective country. We don't have actually in Asia that collective way that we work. Yeah. So that's why the indigenous leader in Asia, they met together, and then they realized to have one organizations in Asia. And then in 2019, they established the Asia Indigenous People Pact, which is based in Thailand. Then after establishment these organizations, so SCA Indigenous People Facts working on the human rights issue, on the environmental issue, and then also on capacity issue and organizational strengthening. And but later on, when our leaders, they are doing the advocacy work at the country level, at the regional level, and the global level, they found that to bring the issue at the global level from the country, so it's really finding the challenging because the leader is not the coming, is not the growing on the rights of the indigenous people issue. So that's why all the indigenous leaders in Asia, they met together. So they realized that we should have one specific programs to build up the second line of leadership for the rights of indigenous people under the Asia Indigenous People Pact. And then the program that I'm leading is called the Regional Capacity Building Program, basically fully working for the indigenous youth to build up the second line of leadership to defend the rights of indigenous people in Asia. And since the establishment of these programs, we are working very closely with the indigenous youth. So when we talk about the leadership is not only one mechanism. So not only the one place. So leadership means that, so from the community to country level to regional, and regional level to global. So we, the indigenous people, we want to see the leadership that at every level that we have a very strong leadership. So as you know, the issues that reveal on the indigenous people is basically at the grassroots level. So that's why we start first building the leadership at the grassroots level, and then lots of the trainings on the indigeneity. So because when you come at the global level and regional level, so the leader when comes, if they don't know how to articulate the issue, if they don't know how to bring the issue at the global level, so this is also very big challenges. So that's why the indigenous leader, they have to be aware about their issue, they are facing every day. So that's why we start working at the grassroots level first, building a strong leadership, so that the leader at the grassroots level, they have a very depth feelings with the issue of community, with the values and principles that indigenous people they have, unless they have a deep attachment with the issue. So then visions will not be developed within them to defend the rights of indigenous people. Then when the visions will be developed within them, then they can be a good leader to do advocacy work at the regional and global level. Then through the work at the grassroots levels, then we see the who leader can lead at the country level in the youth platform. And then we bring the youth from the grassroots level in the national level, the youth platform that we have. Then after having the interventions at the national level youth, then we can see who can represent in the regional level. And then we bring also in the regional level. And at the same time, then we can see through our work in the regional level work, then who can represent at the global level. Then we also send the indigenous youth at the global level. So this is a very much structured way that we build up the leadership for the rights of the indigenous people. So we have at the country level, National Youth Network. We have a regional level, the Asia Indigenous Youth Platform and Asia Indigenous Young People Network. And then at the same time, we have also at the global level that I know, or maximum you might know, the UN Permanent Forum on the Rights of Indigenous People. So at that level, we have also Indigenous Youth Caucus, Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. At the same time, also we have also Indigenous Youth platforms in the FEO room. So then we recommend the youths who are very much confident and have a capacity to represent the youth. And then now come the challenges that you were asking, the working with the indigenous youth. The main challenge, you know and I'm really happy that since the beginning of this, the Asia Pacific, the climate, the way, then the governments and also the non-government and UNs, all the stakeholders. So I think in their discussion, issue of the indigenous people took place in difference. Even the side event in the main events. So I am really happy about it. And then you see that the reason why the indigenous people, the majority, live in the forest. And their livelihoods, their values and principles is rooted in the forest. Yeah? So the indigenous people, they love the forest because their livelihood depends on the forest. They don't depend much on the market economics. Mostly they collect their food from the forest. So that's why that they know how to take care of the forest, yeah? How to take care of their lands, their resources. So this is is showing that now the indigenous people, they have their own way, and then they have the indigenous knowledge that is very much effective to defend the climate now. So that's why at the international events in the forum is taking place to talk lots on the indigenous issue since the beginning of this program. So this is actually the key, yeah? So the challenges is now that we say that indigenous people is actually the land that they have is now, I would say that is taken by the land grabbers, all those things, and which is actually the contributing to the climate change too much. So this is the time now actually to focus on this issue actually not only the talking on the table, also the now need to focus as the climate change is not only the indigenous issue, it's a global issue now. How we can contribute actually to defend it. So then I would say that to defend the climate is not solely for everyone. I think the government, non-governments, and indigenous people, non-indigenous people, all together holding hand to hand, and maybe we have to combat for it. Yeah, this is the I want to say. Yeah, and thank you very much. Maybe I took lots of time. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was in depth. We could have understood a lot of things, and I think maybe you have a lot of questions, or all your questions have been clear. The design and implementation of climate-related projects, initiatives in Asia Pacific, your work in Indonesia. Maybe you could mention briefly about purpose as well.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Maybe you never heard about purpose, but we're not taking a long time to explain what purpose is. You can search and find out in purpose.com. So basically, purpose is social impact agency, but we also have a foundation that mostly helping people to using creative storytelling and also narrative to escalate NGOs or like youth movement campaigns. And for that question, so basically what we do is first, of course, everyone talk about it, providing a platform. In purpose, we offer a stage and also space for not only young people but also indigenous people to voicing their concern. The example we do in COP27, and we also work with government such as UN, and also we in Indonesia we work with local government, and India also we work with local government to make sure that they have a platform to include young people and also indigenous people to not only voicing their concern but also like make sure they involve in designing policies, and it get a lot of success in India. Achilles know better than me that in India we also success to make sure we contribute and young people contribute to EV policies and also in air pollution policies. And we also acknowledge that the big problem for a young movement is on funding. So what we do actually is we giving like small grants And also we connected these young people to the donors. We like creating a space, we call it matchmaking between the donors and also the young people, the CSO, and also others community that need access of the funding itself. And mostly our role is make sure that these young people not only being object in this conference or like being object in the policy or like in the politics situation, but also really taking part, not only like speak, but also like really contribute to create a framework of the policy or like creating a draft, really have formal consultation with the young people. It's what we do in several countries, including in India and Indonesia.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very important point on not just having youth washing. We have moved from greenwashing to youth washing in this period of time, but being very key stakeholders in all the processes that we have. And for that, now I move back to Joshua. And again, as being a partner in development that works on the sphere of meaningful youth engagement in climate governance, is there an example within your network that achieve successful youth government engagement or partnerships in the region? And maybe in context of time, be a good question. Yes.
I'll try to be short and succinct. Yes. That's the short answer. No. So yes, the next session later, we will be introducing the compendium of best practices between government and youth in the Asia-Pacific region. I don't want to spoil so much because that's where Din Long is going to explain a little bit more. But we are sharing along with UNSCAP Meaningful Youth Engagement in Climate Action Policy Brief. And I think this year there's a lot of waves, at least in the Asia-Pacific region, of meaningful youth engagement. And maybe a short example of success story, one success story from my country. So this is a partner, a government and youth-led partnership. So we were doing the first ASEAN dialogue on climate action, and it was the first kind of like ASEAN youth dialogue, which is specifically just focused on climate. It's not like a youth event and then there is a thematic theme on climate, and feel like sometimes it's watered down. But at that time it was like 3 days of just like talking about issues of climate within the region. So one of the main highlight is we produced the declaration, or the Bandar Seri Begawan Declaration, and we lobbied for the establishment of a centralized finance, research and monitoring center in the ASEAN region. And after 3 years, we found out that Brunei decided to establish their first ASEAN Center for Climate Change. And very, very shocked, because Brunei we're very timid people, and it's so nice to see Brunei taking an initiative in starting a very important portfolio in combating climate issue in the ASEAN region. So yeah, earlier this year, His Majesty went to the Legislative Council and finally yes, I agree. So it's pretty much confirmed. So we're just waiting now. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really amazing, and a very successful example of youth government partnerships. I think we'll hear more about this and more examples in the next session, the Youth for Capacity session, where we'll be discussing this. But now I'll move back to Rishia on considering the diverse cultural and socio-economic context across Asia, which is staggering. How does your government approach inclusivity in the climate policy making to ensure representation from various youth demographics? And maybe shortly, along with that, do you think youth needs to take up critical decision-making roles, and not just be in the forefront of advocacy, but also taking critical roles within the government and system to create meaningful change?
This is a very good question. Thank you, Achilles, for